Cool, thank you for dropping in to give this a listen. It's the last three ends of a mixed fours game on the third day of the test that I recorded. It was a really big game because if New Zealand won this, it would put us 2 games up going into the last session of 6 games, and if we lost it, it would put us all square. This narration is recorded after the fact, but I'm going to do my best for no spoilers. And hopefully most of the games will be commentated. I'm on my lonesome today, but I'm hoping to get a couple of people in to add some difference, although hopefully I can be interesting for 3 ends, which is all there is to go. In the description I will be including the team members of both teams, and if anyone's interested in finding a bit more about them, a quick Google search will do fine. Both of the bowls websites have profiles on them. Linda McCurdy getting down now on her forehand. Australia is 1 down. New Zealand is black, Australia is yellow, which is logical. And she's played almost the perfect bowl there, just in behind. I'm not sure if the black is touching, but it doesn't make a great deal of difference. And the Australian skip, very experienced. I think this might be about his 9th test. It's just asked for a bowl on the forehand there, somewhere near. As you can hear from the background audio, she was unlucky with that result, but she has changed it. If you can hear from the background audio, the atmosphere is pretty electric. There were a lot of people watching on all the days, and especially the third day, and it was good to hear the crowd getting vocal in support of both countries. Gary Lowe now getting down on his forehand, probably looking to draw just behind it in a good position. Yeah, very good bowl there. For those of you who don't know or aren't aware, the international game is different for players of both countries. For New Zealand, the mat is thicker and longer, and the bowls are slightly bigger. And for Australia, the thickness and the width of the mat is exactly the same as what they're used to, but the mat is shorter than what they're used to, which is why most of the Australians you'll see actually stand up, and they all dump the bowl, they all drop it. None of them flick the bowl off the mat like most Kiwis do. They also don't generally put a bowl into the box for the next player. In New Zealand it's etiquette to do that. In Australia they prefer to pick their own bowls, a bit more like outdoor. And it was quite amusing through the weekend watching some of the Australians remember and some of them forget. Down on the back end now, perfect results to the jack, and if he goes past it it's okay. It's looking pretty good. That's a great shot there. New Zealand are in all kinds of trouble at the moment. They've got a couple of options though. Need to disturb it, either hand. I might be tempted to play the forehand onto that black, but I'm not sure if the jack is going to kill or not. There's also a plant on the outside of the head on the backhand to play a yellow onto the black through the split and end up with 3, which I think is what Gary's going for. He's played it with good weight, and he's just slightly wide there, probably a bowl wide, but it was good weight for the shot. Australian 3 coming up to the head, they've got a decision to make. So a couple of options there for them. The head's not looking too bad for Australia. They could put a block in, or they can try and reach that back black. If they play just inside the outside one, it should be okay. And that'll just remove most chances that New Zealand's got of scoring. It's about your confidence. Also, what's interesting with these mats is you can hit something with quite a lot of weight and not much happens. For a Kiwi watching, it got a bit scary at times. You're used to, if you arrive with the head with weight, the bowls scattering everywhere. On these mats, because they're thicker, they arrive to head with weight and nothing much happens. All the energy is taken out of the bowls by the thickness of the mat. So it makes run shots and raking a little bit safer, and you can see it in the way the Australians play. Getting down on his backhand, drawing past it. That's great bowling from the Australian. 3. Bit unlucky, but he's also changed the shot that the New Zealanders have. Paul could still try that backhand plant. I'm not sure about the angles on the forehand. We'll have to wait and see. But he has, in the Australian move in that bowl, made it a bit more likely that the jack could kill because it's now touching instead of there being a gap. And he stood perfectly in the way, which is wonderful. This was also the last game going of the session, so everyone is watching. Or I think it was the last game going, it was up there. Just Gary Lowe and Paul Wright having a chat about what to do. Paul's, well, it wasn't the last game. Paul is on debut for this test, been playing very well from the Auckland region. He's getting down on his forehand. Quirk of his delivery, if anyone cares, is he doesn't actually look down at his bowling hand when he lets go of the bowl, which seems to be unique in Australasia. Doesn't make any difference to how well he plays, though. Let's let the bowl go. No idea if it's close or not because we can't see through the Australian 3. I would say he was perhaps either slightly short or slightly narrow by that result. Just looking to tap the jack, he must have been slightly narrow perhaps. It's good to have the scoreboards for the first time this year in that manner. Ordinarily the scoreboards are on the ground, but one of the New Zealand team members, Paul Smith from Tauranga, organised the creation of 6 scoreboards which would hang up on the wall for us, and it made it a lot easier for spectators to see the scores easily, which was great. The Aussie team just having a chat about what they want to do, how to protect the shots. I don't think they can find a place to fit in the 3, so they'll just be... Thank you for sitting down. They'll just be working out what the best option is. They could play on the backhand across the head to put a block in, or the forehand. Again, if you watch, all the Australians do have a backswing from their longer and heavier mats. Okay, so he's put a block in, but he's done it on the forehand, so it didn't make much difference. Move the camera there. Yep, we can see again. So New Zealand would just be looking for any way to move that head. The plant's probably not on the backhand. I don't think he could swing around it with enough weight. And remembering they've got 3 ends to go. All 8-ball games were 18 ends. All 6-ball games were 21. And the 4-ball games, the singles, they were 25 ends. So it was long games for the players. 6 games over a 3-day period. A winner's worth 2 game points, a draw 1, a loss 0. Looks like they're looking at a plan on the backhand. If he can get to the bowl, they will certainly split off and he would end up with a good result. Although I'm not sure if the yellow to our left would go clean through or if it would catch the yellow to the side, but I think we would certainly end up with maybe 1 point. Obviously a big bowl just happened off screen, and it's not unusual for players to keep an eye on how the other games are going to see if they want to build towards a draw or a win when it's close. And that game's obviously just finished. Paul looking like he's getting on his backhand now, using a bit of the box for some late swing, so he could be going for that plant. He's giving it a chance, real close here. That was a great effort. They certainly did go for that shot, and he actually was so close he moved that yellow bowl. Aussies have decided not to play it, which means that Australia, according to the scoreboard, scored 2 shots on that end. So this is the second to last end. Australia is 2 points up. It was interesting over the weekend. I didn't really notice one country or the other favouring a certain length of the jack. In times gone by, I believe Australia favoured the long ends, we favoured the short ends because of the difference in the weight of the mats. But from what I observed over the weekend, all players just, if the jack was varied, it wasn't because of a preference, it was an attempt to either upset the other team or they just flicked on the release. So there was no real preference for either team as to go for which length, which I did find interesting. Maureen Pruden leading off on the forehand there. Slightly short, but she has drawn the shot, and that'll come into play probably later on in the end. There's a bowl in the road, which is never a bad thing, as long as you're holding. The Australian lead on the forehand as well, making a correction. She overcorrected there, she actually fell short and hit Maureen's bowl up. So already the backhand's looking a bit muddy. Maureen will be looking just to go past and reach that back yellow with this shot. Both Maureen and Linda in the mixed fours team are from the Waikato district, and they practiced together with Terry Anderson for the months leading up to the test. That was a great bowl there by Maureen. New Zealand in quite a strong position at the beginning of the set, although that doesn't mean anything. You can see David Edgar sitting next to the water cooler to the right of your screen. He was the New Zealand team manager for this test. That was a great bowl by the Australians. They've changed the head around. She trailed the jack to the back, and it should be touching, and New Zealand no longer has any position, so that'll be Linda's job on the backhand, and if she's slightly short she'll be moving it around. That's a great bowl there, giving ourselves an opportunity for later on in the end. As I said before, it was great to have so many spectators and vocal spectators at this test match. We had 2 grandstands which are behind the camera in this image. Reasonable ball there by Australia. It's a shame for Aussie that she moved it, but she had to be close, and it was a good shot. It might have just changed the dynamics a bit for the head for New Zealand though. Paul Wright calling Linda the 2 up to the head, which is not unusual in a game of fours. I think he would be looking for her to disturb it on the forehand. She's playing with a bit of weight. That's a great shot. Just changing the head around again. Now it's looking like it's slightly favouring New Zealand. We've got a bit of position there. The Australian 3 and the Australian skip will just be talking about their options. Can't see which hand is going because it's obscured, but at least we can see the head. I think he might be on his backhand. Yep, on the backhand, just looking for a positional bowl. She has achieved. It's not a bad shot there. Stopped a bit quickly. And Paul Wright and Gary Lowe will have a chat now about what they want to do, whether they want to move the jack yet or chuck us in position and leave that for a later bowl. There are 4 bowls to come from New Zealand and 3 from Australia. Looks like a decision has been reached. We'll see what he does. Playing with a bit of weight on the forehand, looking to move it. Great shot there by Gary Lowe. Fantastic bowl. I would hazard a guess that we might be holding 1, but even if we're not, we have a nice position on the head now. Australia probably needs to follow him down on the forehand. Also interesting about the Aussie mats or the international mats is they're fully lined across and up, as you can see. On the Kiwi mats we just have a T and a dot, so you have to imagine where the line is. I actually quite like the way the Aussie mats, or the Australian mats, sorry, are ruled. I think it removes any room for error and just makes life a bit more simple. I wouldn't mind it if we had it in New Zealand. We'll just have to wait and see. Close. Very good bowl by the Aussie there. So although we may have the shot, you can't say we have great position on the head. So it probably does need to be improved with this bowl. I'm not sure if Gary knows what he's going to do. Looks like he's on his forehand. Oh, got a better view. Apologies to anyone who gets seasick. He's playing with a bit of weight on the forehand, looking to use that bowl into it. Very good bowl. Unlucky that his collision bowl didn't sit down, but he has improved the head. Again, I would be thinking the Australian skip would be on his forehand, using Gary's bowl to sit down. If the jack is where I think it is, that is. The Australian skip in this mixed four has actually got the closest delivery I observed on the weekend to the Kiwi stance. He kneels, or essentially he kneels. Be very tough on the knees, because if you watch, one of his knees isn't actually touching the floor. But it's pretty close. Although, like all the Australians, he does have a backswing, which is a bit confusing. It is because of their longer mats. It's more like the outdoor game than our one is. And I believe they call the Kiwi bowlers push bowlers, because we push it off the mat. Whereas for a New Zealander, push bowler is like the claw. So he's down on his forehand, off his knee. And he's just playing with a little bit of weight just to reach in there. It looks pretty good from here. Unlucky to catch that early bowl. Had nice weight for the shot, but it does give Paul Wright an opportunity here to try and solidify our position on the head. It is the second to last end. It'd be great if we could score. Just wouldn't take any pressure off, but it would make it a bit more achievable to win or draw this game. Remembering that a win makes us 2 games up going into the last session, which would mean that Australia would have to win 4 out of 6 games to have a chance at taking the Henselite Trophy, whereas if we lose this game, it's a draw going into the last session. So Australia get a bit closer. To the far left of the screen, you can see the 2 New Zealand singles players, Ashley Diamond and Terry Anderson, who actually both feature in the 2014 singles final at the Nationals, which is somewhere on this channel. Probably the best exponents of the singles game as a male and a female from New Zealand, so it's very fitting that they are playing the singles for New Zealand, and they've both been successful in gaining their medals. Terry was a 3-0 win, and Ashley Diamond was a 2-1. They had great games, both of them, with tight heads. Paul on the forehand. Very good bowl there, tightening the head up. I'm not sure what he's done, but it looked good from here. He doesn't look thrilled with it though, so maybe he didn't do much. I would assume New Zealand's holding the shot, and I think what Paul did then was just tighten the head up, make it a bit more dangerous or a bit more difficult for the Australians to get it in and change that head around. Remembering we have the last bowl, Australia could look at a plant, I guess, to try and remove us. I'm not really sure where the jack is situated, so I can't speak with much authority on that. It looks like they're lining up. Maybe that front black, if it's square, would peel the blacks off, or that black, the one he's pointing at, if he gets that square, could peel the blacks off without jack movement, I guess. On these mats, you'd have to play that with a pretty reasonable amount of weight to get much bowl movement, especially when the bowls aren't touching each other. Just so much force is lost in the movement of the bowls from the thickness of the mat. I think they're made of felt. Looks like a decision has been reached. He could be winding up for a big drive here. Down on his backhand, I would be thinking. Yep, on his backhand. If he gets that blacks through, I think we might be in trouble. Big weight. Whew. That was a good effort by the Australians. I think if he had got that, he would have peeled us out. Although the head probably would have been sprayed. I'm not sure what the Australian was doing on the mat then. Perhaps he doesn't realise we've got a bowl. Gary and Paul just having a look, seeing if they can improve the situation. Though I'd be thinking they might be tempted to leave that alone. I'm not sure. If we're holding the shot, certainly. As I was saying before, perhaps if the Australian had actually hit that plant the amount of weight he used, it could have blown the head open, and it would still have given us a chance with the last bowl to gain a shot. Good decision there. So we've taken... having a good look at the ball. We've clearly taken the 1 or 2. We'll know by the scoreboard in a second. Again, sorry to all those who suffer from motion sickness. Ah, that's where the jack was. It's an incredible atmosphere in the hall when this game was going on. I mean, all the games were going on actually, but this game in particular, because at the moment it was the last game going, and it was pretty pivotal as the match turned out. Looks like they'll be calling an umpire. Maureen Bartosh from the Tauranga district. I believe the umpires would like to study up on the international laws. They differ in a number of ways, and I can only speak from a New Zealand perspective from our game. When it is killed, the score is added on to the end instead of another end being played. I think with the first 2 bowls, if it's killed, it's 1 point away. The second 2, 2 points. The third 2, 3 points. And the fourth 2, 4 points. And that's just added on to the end, and the end is replayed. So you can score many, many points in one end. I think the record's about 18. Another difference is you may break the sideline in this game, which I think is wonderful. You still have, the bowl has to exit between the 2 front corners of the box, but you can break the sideline. So when you're on a difficult mat with a huge swing or a straightener, you're allowed to manipulate the bowl a bit more than you can in our game, which I think is fantastic. It's good for weight as well. You can force the bowl to do stuff. It's good fun. Great to hear the crowd supporting New Zealand. I assume could be Australia. It's 13 all going into the last end, which is pretty huge. Maureen's thrown a reasonably long jack, and she's starting off on the forehand. Huge amount of pressure on the players, and that's a fantastic first bowl. Australian lead just taking her time. Down onto her backhand by the looks of it. So she'll be looking at resting the black or landing on the jack. How's her weight? She might be short, I think. Yeah, she's a bit short there, so that's good for New Zealand. She had perfect line, just unlucky she didn't play a little bit more oomph. And Maureen down on the forehand now to solidify the position. Doesn't even matter if she goes past it. In fact, that'd probably be ideal. Just give us something to work for in the rest of the end. Very experienced international player. Just a little bit short there, but the first bowl was excellent, and that might come into play as an awkward bowl for the Australians if they want to reach into the head later on. So the Australian lead looking to redeem herself. Well, not really redeem herself, play a better bowl on the forehand. And again, perfect track but slightly short. There's an incredible amount of pressure on these players, and that can have some effects. Linda McCurdy on the forehand now. She's playing excellent bowls all test. Looks like a great bowl again. Very good. She was unlucky to get that feather, but she sat in a good enough position. Australia could be holding one, but they'll be looking to change it at the moment. New Zealand's got all the position at the back of the head. So the Australian 2 on her forehand, be looking with weight. Yeah, she's played it well, just changed it around a bit. New Zealand holding the shot, and Paul calling Linda on the backhand. Perfect track there, great effort. And again, it might just come to play as an awkward bowl for the Australians to navigate around if we can hold on to the shot. Aussies on the backhand now. Reasonable place to finish there. She wasn't going to be short, and she played it with good line. Paul and Gary just going to have a little chat and decide what the best option is, remembering that they do hold the win as it sits, so they'll be looking at ways to protect the shot. Still talking. Australia has done exceptionally well in this Test series. As a side note, after the last Test series, when New Zealand beat them by a record score, the Aussies came out fighting, as we knew they would, and made very worthy opponents all weekend. There were great games and great bowls by both teams. Gary Lowe on the forehand by the looks of it. It's his second test for New Zealand. That's good, it improves the head a little bit. The Oglvie 3 will be looking to draw as close as he can to that shot black bowl. If he moves the jack, it's good. If he doesn't, he's still got good position. They need to do something. They only have 4 bowls to go, and as a sitting, they have lost the game. On his forehand, by the looks of it. That's interesting. Beautiful track, but he was a bit short. He would have liked to have been reaching into that, so he would have given himself some options. So that does give New Zealand a chance. It's just a decision of which hand to play. They could try the backhand themselves and reach underneath to that yellow, kind of remove a bit of the danger and force the Aussies to do something. Or they could be looking to fall short in line with the jack and just tighten the line up. It's on the backhand, he likes it. That's a good bowl there. Again, it's just making it a bit awkward for the Australians to get to the jack. I can tell you that it's incredibly stressful to have experienced this. A lot of the games were very high pressure and very close, as this game was. Aussie just looking at ways to either open the head up or move it before the skip gets to it. Looks like they might be looking at reaching through the front yellows on the Aussie 3's backhand with a bit of weight and try and open a path up. Or they could be looking maybe through that gap perhaps. I'm not sure. I think it'd be a pretty fine line. Oh, no, I'm completely wrong. He's on the forehand, is he? So I'm watching and they're playing, I guess. On the forehand. Must be looking just to draw around Gary's bowl for the shot, perhaps. I would have been tempted to move the head, but if he gets this, it'll be a moot point, and he's very close. It's a great effort by the Australian 3, although it has it's left New Zealand in a pretty reasonable position, I would say. The Aussies have got 2 bowls to fix stuff, and we've got 2 bowls to protect our win. Great to hear the audience get into it again. And Jenny Stockford pretty clearly there. Very vocal supporter throughout the weekend. Paul and Gary will just be discussing what's best for them to do. Do you block up the front of the head and make it more and more difficult for the Australians, or do you chuck one in the corner of the box and the off chance that he can squeeze the jack out that way? Although personally I think the jack's probably going towards the other yellow. It'll be really tough for the Aussies to get there now. They've just waited a little bit long to move the head around. Though it only takes 1 bowl. Yep, just another bowl on the road. There's nothing wrong with that. Australian skip has to change something with this bowl. I'd be very tempted if I was him or them to be looking through that yellow on the forehand. Just open something up for your last one. Give yourself an opportunity. New Zealand's played this end pretty well tactically, and the head hasn't really changed since we got the shot. It's just been made more and more difficult for the Australians to get a result. And they've perhaps been a little bit more focused on, a little bit tentative. And they have all played very well. So they'll just be looking for something to disturb the head there. I think he's pointing at the yellows on the forehand. The Australian skip's capable of playing some very nice weighted shots. And as I said earlier, I think this is about his 7th or 8th or 9th test or something. He's been playing at an international level for many, many years. So he's experienced this, I would say, quite a few times before. I won't be daunted by it at all. Neither will any of the other players in both teams. They're all very good, established players, as you would expect from a national side. I don't think they'd get the shot if they hit that plant, but they would probably clear a couple of the blacks out and just give them some track to change the head around or get a result on his last bowl. Because as it sits, it's the Great Wall of China at the front, and behind it we've got the 1, which is great for New Zealand and not so good for Australia. Definitely looking at that plant. And all he'll be looking to do is just open the head up and give himself an opportunity. Doesn't necessarily want... It'd be great if he could get the shot of this, but he won't particularly want it, if that makes sense. He'll just be looking to open the head up. So he could play it with quite a lot of weight if there's going to be no jack movement involved. Fantastic delivery down on the forehand. Yeah, and he's played it with a decent amount of weight. Just about hit the ball. Ooh, just about got a follow through for the shot then. There's a very good bowl there from the Australian skip. He's opened the head up a bit. And had he played it with a bit more weight, I suspect that his bowl might have followed through for the shot. He has moved the jack, so it just gives him a bit of room, some opportunities. New Zealand will just be looking to find a way to negate that. Be tempting to put a block in between our front black and their yellow. That does leave the Aussies a shot on the forehand though to roll that yellow up. It's either that or Paul's drawing on the backhand around our second shot to the corner of the box. I'm not sure. There's an argument for most things. It'll come down to pressure for the Australians anyway. If we can, we will hold the shot after Paul's bowl, and then it's just they have to find a way to get the shot. It's just how do we make that more difficult for them. Glad I'm not the one playing it. I'm not sure on these mats if you could get around to the corner of the box on the backhand, so they may be tempted to try and draw and block that hole between the yellow and the black and force the Australian skip to do something. Although then that does leave that shot on the forehand. But sometimes what looks good on a camera doesn't look particularly good in real life. Decisions. They'll just be talking through what the Australians' options are and then finding out what the most likely one is. Looks like they're calling the girls onto the mat. Yeah, they'll just be talking through what the Aussies' options are and what the best thing to do for the New Zealand team would be. By which I mean the mixed fours, not the actual whole New Zealand team. Looks like they've made a decision. We'll know shortly. Looks like he's getting down on his backhand. Perhaps drawing through that gap or to that gap. Or it could be drawing around it to the corner of the box, I'm not sure. That looks good. Whew. Slightly tight, he was looking through inside out off that yellow by the looks of it, which would have been a great shot. As it is, he has tightened the lineup for the Australians and he's actually removed that shot on the forehand that the Australians had before to hit that closest yellow bowl 3 or 4 rolls into the head. He's made that almost not worth playing. They'd have to play that outside split on the yellow to get the proper movement, and even then I'm not sure if it would work. So he might have forced the Australians onto the other hand, and they'll just be trying to get any sort of jack movement is good for them. They've got the 2 back yellows. With Paul's bowl, he removed that shot on the forehand, but he's also tight in the lineup. So it'll be quite tough for the Aussies to get through there. But I'll be thinking they'll be looking through on the Australians' backhand with end of mat weight. If they can get underneath that front yellow, he should be pretty close. Not messing around. Knows what he has to do, and he's going to try and get down and do it. Giving it a chance. Ooh. Fantastic, New Zealand just won. That was a great game. Both teams played exceptional bowls, and as you can hear, the crowd was certainly very appreciative of it. So that puts New Zealand 2 games up going into the last session. Well done to the mixed fours. And come back for more on YouTube. I'll be uploading some games over the next week or 2. They're pretty long, so it might take me a while, but I'll get there eventually. Thank you for watching.